Happy Chanukah. This is a joyous time of year for us Jews as we celebrate the victory of the Maccabees over the Syrian Greeks. Now, this is a time of a year that we celebrate religious freedom. That is the freedom to be Jews, to worship God in our own unique Jewish fashion. This is something that we take for granted. But back 2,200 years ago, there were people who were trying to wipe out our Jewish religion. Now, the story really begins around the year 200 BCE. That's 2,200 years ago, approximately. Israel was being ruled by Syrian Greeks, the Seleucid Empire, which had its capital in what is now the country of Syria. And up to this time, there had been a king by the name of Antiochus III. He was a Greek king who was satisfied with just taxing the Jewish people, making sure that they weren't rebelling against him, but he more or less allowed us to practice our religion as we saw fit. His son, Seleucus III, also had this policy of allowing the Jews to practice their own religion. But Seleucus III had a son who came to the throne in approximately 180. And he was called Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Antiphanes means God manifest. He thought of himself as God. Actually, we Jews had a nickname for him in Greek. Not Antiochus Epiphanes, God, the God incarnate or God manifest, but Antiochus Epimanes, which means Antiochus, the madman. We used to call him, not of course to his face. Now this Antiochus insisted that the Jews become Greek in their religion and in their culture. He outlawed the study of Torah. He outlawed the ritual of Brit Milah, circumcision. He outlawed the observance of Shabbat. He outlawed any kind of expression of our Jewish religion. And this was absolutely intolerable to our people. And so, according to the book of Maccabees, which you won't find in the Bible, these were the first, second, third, and fourth books of Maccabee are actually found outside of the Bible. They're very important Jewish books. We are told that in the year 167, Antiochus had sent one of his generals to the town of Modi'in. Where's Modi'in? It is west of Jerusalem, sort of near that area where Ben Gurion Airport is located in modern Israel. And this Syrian Greek general entered this town, and he erected a statue of Antiochus, this tyrannical king, and a statue of Zeus. And he called the Jewish leaders of the town of Modin to pay homage to the king and to worship a Greek god. And Mattathias, who was the head of the household of Hashmon, later on they became the Hasmoneans. We called that whole group the Hasmoneans. He pretended that he was going to actually worship Zeus and pay homage to the Greek god, but instead he drew his sword and he he killed that Syrian Greek general, and that began a rebellion that began in 167, but it really didn't end until about 140 BCE. But what happened in between 167 and 164 was very interesting. Mattathias and his 5 sons fled to the hills of Judea, and even though they were so outnumbered and they did not have the military equipment and supplies and the numbers of soldiers that the Syrian Greeks had, miraculously, our ancestors beat the Syrian Greeks. And the Syrian Greeks in 167, after the Maccabees, led by Mattathias' son Judah, entered the temple and cleared it of all pagan influences on the 25th day of Kislev in the year 164. Finally, Antiochus said, "You Jews can worship as you want. We won't interfere anymore." Now, the Maccabees continued to fight until 140. They fought not just for religious freedom, but for Jewish sovereignty over the land of Israel. And by 140, they'd finally thrown off the yoke of Syrian Greek domination in the land of Israel. Now, there is a wonderful story that we find in the Talmud about Chanukah. We don't find it in the books of Maccabee. We find it in the Talmud. And we are told that when Judah finally entered the temple, finally removed the Syrian Greek oppressors, and he came to the Holy of Holies, and there he found that the menorah there, the 7-branched menorah, was just about to go out. It was sputtering. And in those days, they didn't use candles. They used oil and little wicks. And what was happening was it was just about to go out. And Judah looked around for oil. And all he could find was a little pitcher of oil, enough to last one day. And it took at least a week. It took about a week to make this very special pure oil that burned without smoke. But a miracle happened. That little cruse of oil lasted not just through the night and the next day. It lasted for 8 days. And so, at this time of year, we light our Hanukkah menorahs. Well, a Hanukkah menorah is actually should be called a Chanukiah. But you can call it a Hanukkah menorah if you like. We light each day one candle. Well, we light the shamash, that is the servant candle, and one additional candle on each day of the 8 days of Hanukkah. There was a debate in ancient Israel between Shammai and Hillel as to whether we should begin with 8 candles or 8 lights and diminish by 1 light on each of the successive days of Hanukkah. Shammai said we should begin on the first day with 8, and on the second day 7, on the third 6, etc. Hillel said no. Hillel said no, we should begin with 1 candle, and on the second day with 2, and etc. And we should increase the number of candles, because what's the main goal of our religious tradition? It's not to diminish light in any way, but it's to increase the amount of light that there is in the world, to bring God's message of redemption, compassion, and justice, not just to the Jewish people, but to all peoples. Now, let's go over to our Hanukkah table and I'm going to teach you the blessings. I'm going to teach you the blessings and show you how to light your Chanukiah. Join me over at the Chanukah table. Well, here we are at our Chanukah table, and we have a variety of Chanukah Chanukiot, or some people call them menorahs. Now, according to Jewish tradition, a Chanukiah has to have 9 branches, 8 for each of the days of Chanukah, and 1 for the shamash. The shamash is the servant candle. So that gives us a total of 9 places for candles. Some people have Chanukiot that have places for oil, and they put little wicks in them, and you can just use olive oil or some other kind of cooking oil, and that's really fun. Now, another thing that Jewish tradition tells us is that the 8 places representing the 8 days of Hanukkah should be on the same level. Not everybody is so attentive to that rule. You can see this Chanukiah here, where you have the shamash and you have the first candle a little higher and the last candle a little lower than the ones in between. But this is the normal way that we usually have a Chanukiah. Notice in the back here, one of my lights is out. Notice in the back here we have an electric Chanukiah. There we go. Now that's not what you use to fulfill the mitzvah of lighting the Chanukiah. But we're supposed to engage in what is called Pirsum Hanes, which is the advertising, the spreading of the news of the miracle, of course, of that little cruse of oil that I told you about. And it was a tradition in many communities to place their Chanukiot out on the steps of the house or in the window. But that can be a little dangerous, can't it? I have an electric Chanukiah. I don't say the blessing over it, but I put it in my window during Hanukkah, and I light the appropriate number of lights in it during the holiday. But let's take a look at how we are to put the candles in and how we are to bless the candles. Now, what we do, I'm going to take these 2 candles out, and let's pretend this is the first night of Hanukkah. What you do, you start over on the far right, and you put your candle in. You go from right to left. On the second night of Hanukkah, after placing the first candle in the far right slot, I will put a second candle in, moving toward the left. Now, when I get ready to light the candles, I do that a little bit differently. What I do is I light the shamash, the servant candle, and I light the last candle that I put in. So I light from left to right, just like this. So, just as a review, we place the candles in from right to left, and we light them from left to right. Let's do the blessings. Let me teach you the blessings now. The first blessing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner
shel Chanukah. And now the second blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asa nisim lavotenu v'imotenu bayamim ha'hem ba'zman hazeh. And on the first night, only on the first night, we sing the Shehechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kihimanu v'higianu lahazman hazeh. We have a lot of wonderful activities here at Temple Bethel during the festival of Chanukah. On Saturday night, December the 8th, at 5:30 p.m., you're invited to come to the synagogue, and we're going to assemble on our front lawn, where every year we put up a giant electric menorah. And we're going to sing Chanukah songs, and we're going to get Chanukah off to a great start. The next morning, that will be Sunday, December the 8th, right after religious school at 11:30 a.m., we're going to have a latke party. It's going to be terrific. We're going to have latkes and sufganiyot. What are latkes? Well, you know, latkes are those wonderful potato pancakes we eat on Chanukah, and sufganiyot are jelly donuts that are also eaten on the festival. We are going to have all sorts of crafts and activities. We're going to have Israeli dancing. It's going to be terrific. I want to see you there. And on December the 14th, that's Friday night, December the 14th at 7:15, that's 15 minutes before our regular Shabbat service, I invite you and your family to bring your Chanukiot, your Chanukah menorahs, to the synagogue. We're going to assemble in the foyer outside the sanctuary, and we're going to say the blessings, and we're going to light our menorahs, our Chanukiot, and it's going to be terrific. And then we'll go in and have our regular Shabbat service. Well, I hope that this is the best Chanukah ever for you and your family.